Welcome to another episode of Put in Work Show. My name is Mark Rankine.
And my name is Luis Guaman.
And today we're being joined by the very tanned, the very handsome Paul Nelson, CEO extraordinaire, mentor of the year, just an overall renaissance man. Paul, what is it that you do not do exceptionally well?
I don't know. I haven't found it yet.
Nothing.
Oh,
First of all, thank you for joining us, sir.
Thanks for having me.
It is
Yeah.
my esteemed pleasure to have you on Put in Work. I just to give you guys some context of who Paul Nelson is, the great Paul Nelson. He has been a mentor of mine for the past 8 years. We have been best friends. Who says you can't be best friends with your mentor? Like, I really give him the latitude to correct me, to coach me. We've really had some our relationship is just amazing. Highs and lows, but we always come out on the other side much closer. We don't get to see each other as much anymore just because our schedules are so crazy, and he's out there conquering the world and I'm doing my part to further the world and my belief system. But it's just really, really a privilege and a pleasure to have you here, Paul.
Well, thank you, Mark. I'm excited to be here.
100%.
goodness, man, with an intro like that.
I know. Where do you go from there?
So
We can just end it right there.
How about for the rest of us where
Right.
we haven't known Paul
Okay.
forever? Tell us your story, Paul.
All right. How much time do we have?
We have enough.
I've lived quite an interesting life.
Yes.
Born in Manhattan, actually. Grew up here for 10 years. I was. I'm not Hispanic. When I was. I don't know why that's funny. When I was a kid, I was really tan.
Right.
Like, just a natural tan. And I was really shy. And I was in the park or somewhere one day, and someone saw me, and they actually wanted me to be in like some kind of play.
Wow.
To play a young Hispanic kid, even though I wasn't. And my parents were
Everyone wants to be.
Right?
Yeah.
I guess I can be if I want to be.
Perhaps.
And my parents weren't going to let me do it, but for some reason I didn't want to. I guess I was only a kid. I was afraid.
Right.
Anyway, there's no point to that story.
Just more of his character. More of your character.
Growing up, I was always just interested and creative and curious and looking into things and always doing things. And I always just loved learning.
Right.
And right when I was about to turn 10, I moved from New York City to the suburbs in Connecticut. And it was a real radical shift for me because it's a time period when I had all my friends made and I was moving away from them. And I didn't know anybody, and I moved to a very wonderful area. It's also an area with a lot of judgmental kids who grew up there, very wealthy kids who aren't the most welcoming to outsiders. And I came in a time where I had an injury, and I developed this habit of I just started feeling bad, and I took that first summer, instead of going out and making friends and playing, I sat inside all summer and I felt bad for myself, and I just ate a lot of food and watched a lot of movies. And I went from that skinny fun kid to I put on a bunch of weight, and one summer and became the big kid.
Oh, wow.
And so I entered school in 4th grade as the new kid who was also the big kid in a class where there weren't a lot of big kids. And immediately I got so much made fun of. And my self-image went from here down to here very quickly. And the teenage years, I think, are a very important time because it's that shift from I don't want just my parents' approval anymore, I want my peers.
That's very true.
And I wasn't getting it. And I lived on a street where there were like almost 10 kids in my grade that were living on the street, grass yards, fun place to be. I did sports. And I just, right away, because of all that being made fun of, my self-image just started to get lower and lower. And I always was starting to seek acceptance and approval from others because I couldn't get it within myself. And I started developing right away this habit of just wanting to get home from school as quickly as I could, go home, eat whatever I want. I ate horribly. Like my favorite foods were mac and cheese and salami and pizza and hamburgers. That was my main food.
That's pretty awesome, though.
It was good food.
Yeah.
And I would just watch TV, play video games, and somehow get my homework done. And I just kind of skated by because I just felt no sense of belonging, no community, and all the friends that I really had, I wouldn't call them true friends. They're just people I hung out with. And I ended up hanging out with kids that were not the best quality kids. And it really destroyed me. I remember walking home from school one day and kids were spitting at me. And these are kids who live down the street from me. And now I realize, that's a reflection on them, not me. But back then, that really hurt. And I would go home and feel horrible. And then I was in a situation where my brother had a lot of his own issues. And so my parents focused
Younger, older?
Older brother.
Okay.
And so my parents focused so much attention on him that they never noticed any of the issues for me. So I just came home, all I wanted to do was go in my room, lock the door, and all my brother wanted to do was get approval from me because he wanted me to be his best friend.
Sure.
And it was a really not the best situation. And my parents did great. They both loved their jobs, they worked really hard. I don't blame them for that. I think I'm a symptom of a larger generation of kids who came home to dual income parents who and their parents were their television. And I would have loved to have been best friends with my brother, but he terrorized me so much that I didn't want to be around him.
Sure.
And as I grew up, I started finding a love in certain things. I really fell in love with science. I became very passionate. I got really into space travel. In high school, I joined this class called Authentic Science Research. It's a 3-year program where you choose a project, some kind of audacious project, and you spend 3 years focusing on it. You try to find scientists who are working on it. You give talks about it. Oh, wow. And I knew I wasn't smart enough to invent something, but I figured I could find something really cool and just learn about it. And so I got really into something called a space elevator, which is the concept of building an actual transportation device from Earth into outer space.
Cool.
Yeah, it's actually a viable thing that could happen. And at the time, I thought I loved it because of the science of it. What I really loved is every person that I talked to about it, they said that won't work. And I just enjoyed telling them, no, actually it can. Like I'm talking very educated professionals who are like, that's impossible. And I started getting addicted to this feeling of doing things that people didn't think I could do.
That's awesome.
And so I found my confidence in that. Outside of that, I was very shy, very quiet. I started hanging out with really bad kids. They're not bad human beings, just they didn't have the best values.
Sure.
And I wanted approval, I was desperate for acceptance. And so I hung out with kids who, actually one day one of them came to my house and stole a bunch of my stuff. My parents had to call the police.
Seriously?
Yeah. And that destroyed me.
Yeah.
I mean, at a time when all I wanted was acceptance, and that happened. And then somehow I got involved with sports. I started playing a sport called Frisbee, which is like basically football for white people.
Frisbee's fun.
It's fun. It's for people who couldn't make it in football or soccer. But it's a ton of fun. And I finally found a community of kids that didn't judge me. And in high school, my brother threw parties growing up. And I wanted to, I followed in his precedent that my parents let him throw parties in our basement.
Oh, wow.
And so as I grew up, I said, okay, let me do that.
Right.
And so my junior year of high school, I started inviting people over. And the parties got bigger and bigger to eventually we're having 50, 60, 70 people. And
wow.
Looking back, I should have charged money out.
Yeah, totally.
A lot of money. The amount of stress that was on me to make it happen, and keep it going and not let it end. We'd bring 10, 20 people through the front door, and my parents were like, okay. And then we'd sneak all the alcohol over the fence. And like 30, 40 more people.
Nice.
I remember one time it was so big, the basement was full, the door, people were out swimming in the pool. There were 20, 30 people in our front yard trying to get in. And my parents...
So basically, they actually based the movie Project X off
Basically,
of your life.
that was his life.
This was before that movie.
Gotcha. It happened.
We did have the police come one time, but because I was smart enough to have my parents there, when the police came in, my parents were like, get out. Because, they're on private property.
Right.
So we were good to go. And luckily, we didn't have anything.
Threw the cops out.
Yeah. It was awesome.
Oh, man.
So I started getting that acceptance, and I really enjoyed it. And it's something that, it grew and grew. And eventually when I left high school, I knew I wanted to start over.
Sure.
So I grew up in the Northeast. I said, I want to go elsewhere. So I didn't apply to colleges anywhere in the Northeast. I said, get me out of here. Most of what I did was in the West Coast. I was very bold. I applied for Ivy League schools. I wanted to go to Stanford.
Yeah.
I wanted to do engineering. I applied to probably 30 schools. I think I got into maybe 2 or 3. Because to get into engineering school, you have to get into the regular school and then the engineering school.
Oh, wow.
And so it was very intense. And somehow I ended up at the one school I really wanted to go to, which is University of Wisconsin-Madison.
Sure.
Because my dad went there. I grew up a fan of the team as a Badger fan. Go Badgers.
Go Badgers.
It's actually a very big school for New Yorkers to go to. It's the #1 party school in the nation.
Really?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, fun
really
fact.
It's so cold, you got to do something. And I went out there and said, let me reinvent myself. Here's this do-over. I went out there. I actually played on the college ultimate frisbee team, the JV team, but I still did it. And got in shape, lost 20 pounds. Went to class sometimes. Had a ton of fun, partied a lot. And was really still looking for that sense of belonging. And I still, whenever I found a group of people, I never found a group of people who really, people to party with, to hang out with, never necessarily people that I could
click,
that would encourage me, that I felt like this is we have shared values. And somehow one day I met a young gentleman who said, I'm surrounded with people who are into personal development and working on themselves and mentorship, and he brought me into that environment, and it changed me.
That's awesome.
Because every group I went into, because I was desperate for that approval, people would make fun of me, and I would allow it because I wanted the approval. Now I was in an environment where people were building me up. And I was goofy. I didn't know how to dress nice. You know, if I was at a professional event, I wear Nike sneakers with a swoosh and and I had a tie. I didn't know how to tie it. I'd have to slide it off and on. And but that had an effect over me. And in a year and a half in that environment, starting to learn to read professional development books or personal development books, listening to things, positive audios, not just negativity. And after about a year and a half of that, my biggest fear has always been talking to people. And somebody said to me, your biggest fear or your biggest struggle will become your biggest victory. And I said, okay,
sure.
Yeah, right? And after a year and a half of that, I finally realized that the gap between the dreams and goals I want to accomplish and where I am is simply the fears that are holding me back.
Absolutely.
And somehow I just reached a point where it's like I have to let that I can't let it stop me. And I broke through. And I just started connecting with anybody and everybody, not to get any result, just simply to learn to talk to people. And I was really bad at it. And I kept doing it and doing it and doing it.
Me too, brother. It's just so bad.
I mean,
it's just so bad.
I mean, even when I dress professionally, I still wear a sideways hat. Like that was my way. I don't know. It was when I was growing up, because I was a bigger guy. I wear a sideways hat to try to cover up. I don't know. That was just how I was. And in that year and a half, I was put in an environment where I was able to apply those principles in a business opportunity where I was able to actually amass an organization of about 50 to 100 college students. And we were working together, improving our lives, and doing some e-commerce business. And it grew me. And I remember I never wanted to be in a leadership position. One of my strengths is I'm very loyal. And the people who I connected with, day one, is I said, man, I just want to be like those people. I want to be friends with them. Because the two people that really brought me into that environment were the cool kid and the fun guy. And I wanted to be like those people. I wanted to hang out with them. And so it wasn't about anything else. I just wanted to be like them. And then slowly what happened is I started becoming them. I started learning that I could be that. I didn't need them. And what's funny is there's a transition period, there are 2 years into that, where they actually faded away from my life. And that's when I stepped up.
To take over,
And I took a summer, right after my second year of college, and instead of partying, not that I didn't have fun, but instead of doing that, I just focused and I grinded for about 6 months and just flipped the switch. And I was able to take my business from somewhere around maybe $500 to $1,000 a month to about $15,000, $20,000 a month in revenue.
Brilliant.
So let me pause you right there, Paul, because honestly, for your episode, he has a phenomenal business. Last year, you did over $2 million in sales, all this other stuff. But for you, I don't necessarily want to focus on the business aspect of as much. I want to focus on the personal development portion. And here is why. Because on the Put In Work show, there's no motivation, there's no rah-rah, there's no you can do it, blah, 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 just grind and raw. We don't need that shit. We need direction. And the question that comes up every time with entrepreneurs that we speak with is, man, I just bet on myself. I had the confidence to know that I'm gonna go out there and get it done.
Yep.
And I can put money down on myself. I didn't need an organization to back me. I just went out there and I put money on myself that I'll be successful.
Yeah.
However, my question is always, what do you say to the person who haven't found that strength yet? Not the person who can't do it or is shy, because I don't believe in that. I believe you just haven't found your strength as yet. And typically the response is, well, you know, they can't relate. But I have seen it where you came through the gamut. You made a complete 180, and it's like you're now sought after speaker, mogul, like all around, like fitness junkie. Now you're doing all this stuff, right? Speedbots, a musician. So how did you raise your self-image? How did you raise your game? How did you improve, like,
I get what you're saying.
yeah, how do you take that out and replace it with like positivity, confidence?
Yeah, absolutely.
And give us the practical, like the step-by-step, the play-by-play, so someone else can do it.
Right.
What was the daily grind that I was doing?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So within that period that I was just talking about,
6 months?
That's when that daily grind really took charge. And like I said, I could have taken that somewhere and just relaxed.
Right.
And done nothing. And I said, no, I'm going to stay out here and I'm going to work. And I'm going to put this together, because once I broke through my fear, there was nothing stopping me except maybe the skill set. And I realized that I just got to keep doing it and I'll get better.
Absolutely.
And so through that skill set, so what I really, of course I engulfed myself in action. At the same time, I engulfed myself in growing my mind.
And how did you grow your mind?
Well, for the first year and a half, I fought personal development. I fought reading books. And so I finally started reading books. I started reading things like John Maxwell, started reading leadership books. I started reading this book called The Servant Leader. I started reading this book, you know, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah.
You know, I started reading books that help put things in my mind. I said, all right, if talking to people is my biggest struggle, I'm going to read every book, listen to every audio I can about how to talk to people.
You know, it's interesting. So why didn't you read that before? Was it because the genre interested you? You know what, this is interesting, so I'm going to start reading about it. And before, you didn't really like to read? Is that what it was?
My whole life I avoided reading. You know, in college I didn't want to read the book. You know, in high school it was always, how can I find the spark notes? You know? I didn't want to do the reading. Let me watch the movie.
Right.
Right. And I never was a reader before. And I never had read a book where I actually gained value out of it. And so when I started picking up these books, I couldn't put them down.
So that was it. It was the interest. I say that because that's the same exact thing with me as well. Only between a recent few years, you know? Most of my experience really comes from just following my face a lot and really learning personally, just experience and my mentors. But it's really silly. Only during the last few years, I really got into reading books because I figured this whole genre, or just discovered this entire genre existing in the first place. And then I couldn't put it down. And then
the genre being personal development.
Personal development. Okay. And then I would attribute that to maybe other genres too, and seeing like how it really affects each other. And, right, same thing.
That's great. So you started reading.
Yes.
And then you also started like facing your fears, doing the things that you're afraid of. How did you bring yourself to do that?
I read a book called The Magic of Thinking Big.
Changed everything, right?
Yes. And it said action cures fear.
Can you say that right there?
Action cures fear.
And what book is this?
The Magic of Thinking Big.
Phenomenal. And would you recommend that to every person?
Absolutely. It's a very easy read.
I would put money that you've read tons of books right now, right? What is your favorite in terms of personal development for yourself personally? That's one. And the second, if you can give one book to somebody else to really start them off on that path, what's that one?
So you're jumping ahead, because my favorite book I didn't come into contact with till a few years ago. And it's called The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho.
Oh yeah, it's a great book.
That's my favorite
great
book. No other book has ever come close to how much I love that book. I've read it probably 10 times, and I keep rereading it. And every time.
Why just for you?
Because that book has completely changed my life. And every time I read it, I'm in a different perspective. Because the whole book is about everything I'm searching for is within, and that there's a specific purpose that I'm here to accomplish. And that I can create whatever it is that I want to create, and that the universe is literally there guiding me to help me create what I'm here to create. And every time I read that, it reminds me of I'm on the right path. and I'm doing the right things.
That's brilliant.
And so it took me a long time to realize that, and I think I needed to go through everything I went through up until that point to be ready for it.
100% agree with that.
And something that I really learned from you, Paul, is I used to ask you, like, why do you recommend these books so much? Like, why is it that you're so hardcore? Like, you have to read, you have to read. And you said this, and it changed my life. You said, if you're going from here, this is your end goal, and you're right here, and you're on a straight path, and something is, you're going off alignment. If like, you're my mentor, if you tell me the things and I'm not open, then that becomes criticism. And I'm like, shut the fuck up, you know? But with the book, I can't argue with the book. It's either I change, realign, or I close the book.
I remember in college, one of my friends, Samir, he's a 4.0 student. He was studying, and he hated what he was reading. He picked up the book, threw it as hard as he could against the wall, picked it back up.
Yeah, of course. You can't argue with the book. You have to just do the things.
Yeah.
And so many times that, and it's not that I'm not coachable, but your way of leadership is such a loving and very like nurturing. You wouldn't tell me what to do. You would say, have you ever read such and such a book? And I'd be like, yeah, I've read the book. He goes, reread chapter so and so. And I'll be like, all right. And then it's like, whoa. Yeah. Oh my God, mind blown. And then he'd be like in the back laughing at me like, I wanted to tell you that. Actually, I did tell you that, but you just never listened.
So he was just Jedi mind tricks.
Yes! These Jedi mind tricks.
That's a classic mentorship thing. I love doing that.
Absolutely.
You know? Yeah.
It's great.
I think personal development is like, it's like getting a doctorate in human awareness, human execution.
Yeah.
And so when somebody asks me something, I reference and I think, okay, what did I read that helped me understand that or learn that?
Sure.
And I say, and I ask somebody, have you read this? And they say, yeah. And I'm like, are you sure? What you're doing shows me that you didn't read that.
You need to read that again.
Yeah, maybe you should revisit.
Yeah.
But the second book, what book would you recommend to anybody? Yeah.
Yes. On anything, any topic.
Yeah, I know, and obviously that's a little bit tough. It's really general.
I've really become interested in leadership. And so any John Maxwell book, if I have to choose one, the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell.
Gotcha.
The first leadership book I ever read, changed my life.
Really?
Another book I'd really, really highly recommend is called The Go-Giver. And then they have a sequel called The Go-Giver Sell More. That's more the business version. It's all about how The Go-Giver is all about how giving is actually the key to success.
Absolutely.
It's really powerful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And your life embodies
and
that.
I'm all about books that are stories.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, I need a story within there, otherwise it's hard for me to...
The context,
I mean, I'll read it, but then it's hard for me to grasp it.
100%. Really quick on that, just really quick on that point, because something I was just thinking about the other day is that there's so many people who are looking for hacks for everything.
Yeah,
just hacks
the shortcut.
for everything. You know, there's nothing really wrong if you're gonna have like, okay, spark notes here and there, you know, once in a while. But literally, people think that knowledge, true knowledge, is coming from, all right, look, I'm gonna look at this video online, and I'm gonna look at the comments, and they're gonna list that they have, right? Or I'm gonna go on the audio, and then I'm gonna see the bookmarks on it, and I'm just gonna like, okay, let me just see a couple of parts.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, people don't realize, and this is a really big thing, I haven't heard anybody else say yet, is that they miss the context. Because the whole reason why they have a book is simply because it builds the vision and the story, not just that somebody's hearing, but that the person is perceiving, the story that they're making on how they understand it. So then you get these yahoos over here who are just cool, like, I'm just gonna read through, like, I get it, get to the point. Those people straight up just don't get successful. Or they get successful much longer because they're impatient. And that is just a whole other conversation, but there you go.
So, I mean, something I've always kind of admired about how you operate your business is that when some guys would come into the room and be like, I am fucking boss, you will listen to me. You're more like, hi, good evening. And by the end of the interaction, people know, oh shoot, he runs this whole thing. Like, all of this is his. And it's like, but he's like just the meek, mild-tempered guy in the back until you get the microphone. Now, is that like would you recommend that? Or because we have interacted with people, and we still do work with people who are very like alpha in the way that they handle things, and they're very, you know, dominant, and you will know that I am in charge, and we do work with those people, and it's great.
Yeah.
But why your method, and why does it work for you?
You know, one of my coaches, she said, don't mistake my niceness for weakness.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think anyone does that after at least 2 minutes with you.
I think in New York especially, people think that because if you're not the loudest voice in the room, if you don't have the most, you know, loud outfit, if you know, if I don't have whatever the most followers, then don't listen to me.
Sure.
And that's not my style.
Right.
Sure.
You know, I think there's a spectrum. Kind of what you were saying back to before about my style. You know, there's a spectrum of the alpha male, you know, the strict disciplinarian, and that's how they teach, that's how they lead, and that works. There's nothing wrong with that. There's pros and cons of it. Then there's the other side. There's the more kind of loving, caring, compassionate leader, and I think it's kind of in the other end of the spectrum.
Right.
I think there is a balance in between. You know, I'm around a lot of alpha males, and for a long time I didn't like it because I'm like, they don't understand. They just like all they care about is execution.
Yeah,
what about you know, what about compassion?
Yeah.
And it really frustrated and bothered me for so long. And then I realized they're just doing themselves. They're just who they are.
Yep.
I can't be upset at them.
Yep.
They actually need me to be there to show there's another side.
Yeah.
Because they can't lead my kind of people with that strategy.
Right.
Same thing.
It's 100% true.
I can't lead those people without having people in my life who are that way. You know, I've been able to work with Mark Amos, one of your previous guests, for, you know, over 8 years. We'll get to that story later.
Yeah.
And he is one of those alpha males.
Yeah.
And the reason is because I've connected myself with other people who are like that, who can lead him, so I don't have to.
Absolutely.
And I've learned to work with people like that. And I think he's learned a lot from me, and I've learned a ton from him because we're complete opposites.
That's the best kind of, I don't know if we're complete opposites, but we complement each other pretty well.
We complement each other well.
Yeah, we complement each other really well.
Yeah.
Like, good sandwich. All right, cool.
Yeah, so basically, so I've always liked that, but how do you actually work with someone who is the complete opposite of you? Because for a lot of people, especially in our audience, like one person rarely has all the skill sets to take care of the entirety of the business. You have to team up with somebody. And most of the times you're attracted or you end up partnering with someone who's the complete antithesis of you. But how do you work with these people? Like everything that they do goes contrary to how you would do it. But you do recognize the value in their contribution to the entire operation. So how do you reconcile, how do you work with these people?
It all comes down to something that I learned from Simon Sinek, which is start with why.
Yeah.
And I applied that for so many years without knowing I was applying it. And that I always led, whenever I was looking for somebody that I want to work with, that I potentially would want to mentor or lead or vice versa, I always, without even realizing really, this is what I'm about.
Right.
You know, I'm about making an impact. I'm about helping people live better lives. I'm about not just looking at people as business partners, but also people that I want to be friends with. And if I don't see that match, then we're not going to work together, no matter how high qualified you are.
Right, right.
And now my philosophy has shifted even more because now I've been able to clarify my why, and I'm able to identify right away. I don't care how opposite or how different you are. If the why, as Simon Sinek says, if that's the same, it doesn't matter.
Right. Absolutely. The values that really seep into everything, right? And that's what I tell people all the time. That's good. We're gonna hang out. I'm down. We're gonna hang out.
This
You
is
could be
why
there.
Mark and me have been friends for so long.
You could be there too. That's great. But no, go ahead. You had something on.
Discipline, Paul. That has been a major. I'm a savvy guy. That has been a major thing that we both have battled with. I've seen you like battled with a lot of things, and I don't know how you do it, man, because like you still allow yourself to be vulnerable. Like I am your mentee, but you still show me like, hey man, I fuck up sometimes. Like I don't get everything right all the time. Like I go through my ups and downs. Where do you get the discipline in so many different aspects of your life that even though like it doesn't always go right, people still do respect you? How does that part happen?
Well, before I get to that, what you just said about vulnerability, that's a whole topic right
That's
there.
a whole thing by itself. Talk about that.
I want to reference someone named Brene Brown. I highly recommend anybody go watch her videos. She did 2 TED Talks and a 99U talk.
Right here.
Yep, and she's written a ton of books. And her whole thing is about how, I think it's especially with men, but with everybody, especially millennials, vulnerability is not weakness. Vulnerability is courage. It's a source of creativity. And so I think there's this interpretation, I think, really strongly with men that to be vulnerable, to say, I messed up or I'm struggling is weakness, you know, and it's just not true.
Yeah.
And it really bothers me when I see people who are successful go up on a stage or talk and all they talk about is do this, do that. And what I want to hear about is, man, I woke up today and I didn't want to do anything, you know, and here's how I was able to do it anyway.
Right.
That's what I want to hear. Unfortunately, most people don't talk that way.
Absolutely.
And so for years, it frustrated me. And so when I changed my philosophy, said, all right, I need to change that. When I go up there, I'm just going to lead and talk about, I messed up this, and I'm still here.
So it's like throwing yourself under the bus. It's much more relatable.
Yeah.
You're human. Like,
Exactly.
other humans need to realize that we're human too. I mean, it's insane. But that's really it. And what that also really touches upon is actually conflict. I'm actually interested to hear how you deal with conflict. And I mean, the three of us know that there's a lot of different ways you could go about internal conflict, conflict with partners, conflict with people who work with you. But I guess just the base version of what are kind of the steps of how you specifically deal with conflict.
What do you mean by conflict?
Oh man, it's gonna be like a whole hour over here.
It's about to get deep.
But I suppose let's stick with, I guess, the workplace theme. So let's say you have a partner, okay? A partner that you have, and you have conflict. You just don't disagree. I mean, you just don't agree on a subject. And you feel strongly about one thing. He or she feels strongly about something else. And essentially you're having, it doesn't matter, either no money, you just start a company, millions of dollars, because honestly it's the same formula.
Yeah.
How do you remedy this conflict?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've gone through that in the last year or two quite a bit. I think it's about understanding that as long as we're on it, like we have that shared values, as long as we're moving the same direction, as long as that communication is there, we can have a disagreement without it pulling us apart. And of course I've messed this up and I've gotten angry and upset and judgmental and I pull back and say, if you know, in any situation, if I was in their shoes, I would do the same thing. And how can I learn from it? How can I appreciate it? And then I hope that they would do the same thing. I don't know. I can't control them. You know.
Absolutely. And then, really important is dealing with the internal conflict. I mean, I can literally talk about this forever. I mean, it's okay. But yes, what is your take on how you deal with your own internal conflict? Because of course, it always starts within.
You mean like
why,
indecision?
And it goes
not being able to.
Oh, this
self-doubt.
Because exactly, there are different branches to that. The conflict that you have to really, let's say, execute. The conflict that you have to really think positive thoughts, right? The conflicts that you have with dealing with, let's say, family or friends or anything, or dealing with business and friendship, and these things are all really connected. They're really the same. And the fact is, there's so many people that don't really understand of how connected these really thought patterns are. And that's why it always starts with core values, foundations, which I say all the time, which I love to say. And it really deals with your methodology of really how you just deal with yourself. And then how you start dealing with the things or people around you. So people have their own really methods or steps, what they're comfortable with, and they learn from others as well. So yes, so what's yours?
Well, your question ties into his discipline question because I think it's all in the same arena. And it's something I struggled with. You know, as I mentioned, I lived in this place of fear and indecision and lack of follow through on pretty much everything that I did. There is almost pretty much everything until I was 18 I didn't follow through on. And it didn't leave a good track record. I couldn't really trust myself. And you know, being in the business world, it's the one thing I finally have, it's the first time I've not given up. It's the first time I've not just said it's too hard. Not that there hasn't been a million times that I've been like, maybe maybe I should just give it up. And it's the first time that I felt that I can't quit. And for me, it's always been about the relationships because I've fallen in love with the people I work with, and I can't leave them. And so I think for me, living many years of self-doubt and indecision, it really messed me up. And so kind of tracking back to a little bit of my journey, as I created success, I got to this peak of getting a lot of recognition, which is temporary.
Right.
And when the recognition went away, what happened? I stopped working on myself. And I fell backwards, and I went right back to where I was, but 10 times worse, because I knew what I was capable of, and I fell back.
And then you have people looking at you.
Yes, and now I'm in a leadership position where people have expectations, and I'm not just where I was, I'm down in the hole. And it helped me realize, well, this is how people really can spiral apart.
Right.
It's very easy to, and what I somehow was blessed to be at the right time at the right place, kind of like I said with The Alchemist.
Right.
Right at that time, as I was kind of really falling apart, falling backwards, wondering if I can continue it in anything I was doing, is when I had the opportunity to go to the country of Jamaica. And I, what you said, put in the work, counting on myself. I made a decision. I think it was February of 2010, and I said, I am going to build one of the largest businesses ever built in the country of Jamaica. I'd never been there. I didn't know anybody.
Why Jamaica? For
right
you?
Place, right time. It just, I don't know. Kismet.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Yeah. It was, I don't know. And it had to happen exactly when.
Right.
Anything different, it wouldn't have worked out.
Wouldn't have worked.
It had to be Jamaica, where they kind of speak English. It's not that far away, and I went to a country. I want you to paint this picture for yourself. I was a junior in college, never flew out of the country by myself, never been to Jamaica myself, didn't know anybody. And I flew there for 2 weeks, stayed at the hotel, barely left. All I was doing was looking for potential business partners for 2 weeks. I met with hundreds of people to see who can I trust.
Absolutely.
And I found one guy, and that was that guy, Mark Amos, who you had on the get.
Nice.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah. It came like
That's brilliant.
full circle.
Full circle. Put in work, full circle.
Put in work.
And I grinded.
Yeah.
And over an 8-year period, I've gone there over 15 times now.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
I'm turning 30 in a couple weeks.
Woo!
And
So am I.
yes, awesome.
That's insane. We need to, okay.
And I was saying to somebody recently, if my life were to end at 30, the thing I'm most proud of is what I did in Jamaica.
Yeah.
Because nobody could have made me do it, and I've been able to impact people in a third world country. Not just, I didn't just go there and hang out on the beach. I went there for 2 weeks in college, going to the #1 party school. I didn't go to the beach once. I didn't go hang out and drink.
Yeah.
All right, I went there and I worked because I said, I want to come back.
Yeah.
I launch a business here, I'm going to have to come back and back and back and back. And I'd be able to impact so many lives there that every time I go back and I teach people how to live better lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've not been to Africa. If you see the videos of people,
Sure.
where they go there and they hand out food.
Yeah.
So imagine doing that, except you're handing out personal development.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
That's brilliant.
So, as we kind of put the entire culmination of the conversation, I really want to ask you a very pointed question, because we have received a lot of influx of comments and stuff, and people asking us, I started my company, I launched my business, I was really confident everything was going great, and then I fucking fell apart, and the business followed suit. It fell apart. How do I rebuild? How do I put it back together? How do I reclaim myself and then the business?
I think it all starts with you.
Yeah.
I think pull everything aside, doesn't matter what anyone else is doing, what's going on with you. I think it's all about self-actualization.
Right.
Yeah.
As I went through that first journey of success and then reflecting and realized, okay, I got to work on myself. Nope, but let me go and help some people, and that healed me. And then once again, as I created more success in Jamaica, I realized that I also need to work on myself.
Right.
And that the most healing thing that I did was every time I felt really bad, I said, let me go help somebody else. Let me take my eyes off of me and see how I can guide someone else.
That's brilliant.
And so to somebody who's wondering that, yes, go within and see what's going on there. What do I need to work on? And then turn around and see how can I help somebody else overcome something similar.
Yeah.
And that has helped me beyond measure. Because at my lowest times, when I'm able to give value to somebody and realize even at this point I can still help somebody, it makes me realize that it's still worth me being here.
Yeah.
I still can
You're still
give.
able to do something.
Yes. And that's really helped me. And what ended up happening to me is a couple of years ago, I completely fell apart. I hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
And we don't need to go into every detail.
Sure.
But I was back and forth between Wisconsin and New York. I was completely unstable, and I ended up moving back to the East Coast. And I was the lowest I've ever been self-image wise.
Yeah.
No confidence in myself, financial ruin. I basically had almost walked away from business because I was unable to lead anybody.
Sure.
and I was just in a really negative space. And I hit rock bottom. The reason that needed to happen is because I think like a lot of millennials do, had built this false image of everything's great, I'm happy, you know, on social media you see me smiling, you see me at an event, I look good.
Sure.
And I was falling apart in every way possible. I remember one time I was at an event actually, and somebody said, "Hey Paul, did you gain weight?" You know, and you know that's like Jamaican style. You know?
Oh, okay.
They call
Very
you out,
direct.
so. Good and bad. You lose weight, they'll point it out. You gain weight, they'll point it out. And it destroyed me because I was falling apart. And I had to completely rebuild myself from the ground up in the last 3 years. And I said, who do I want to be? What's the life do I want to live? Because I put myself in a point, like many people might be, where it's just business and nothing else.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I'm not saying that focus isn't important. It is. I've learned for me to function, I need balance. And maybe not everybody needs that. For me, I needed it.
Yeah.
Because every time I push, I said, delayed gratification, put everything aside, you know, and just focus for a couple years. And every time I did, I was unhappy. I couldn't attract any positivity because I was repelling it. And so I've rebuilt my life where I enjoy and I love my life. And
that's brilliant.
I have felt so much, I don't know if judgment's the right word.
Yeah.
I've felt a lot of people saying, probably disagreeing with how I've done things. And I just don't care anymore.
Yeah,
You know?
nice.
Because I found it's like, if my life is done, I need to know that I'm doing something I love to do.
Because, from what you said, you're able to understand where you're coming from, you know what you want, then you have enough courage to follow through and take action. And honestly, the entire episode while you've been here, I can really feel the honesty that comes through, just from all of our guests. It's
That's
great.
my vibe.
It really is. And I appreciate your honesty and your openness, because that's exactly what we do here. And that's exactly what we do, and, you know, personally, and that's the people who we are, and that's what we want to share, you know, and I thank you for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Paul. Thank you so much for coming through. And like,
Can I share one last thing?
of course.
Yes.
Absolutely. So in that last couple of years, I rebuilt myself. What I found is that I'm not the only one going through these struggles, these mental, emotional, internal conflicts, as you say. And I realized that millennials especially are going through it like crazy.
Right.
You know, if you look at the numbers, unhappiness, depression, anxiety, addictions, alcoholism, suicide have never been higher.
Right.
For many reasons, from parental upbringing, you know, technology. You know, they say that we're the most technologically connected and the most emotionally disconnected in history at the same time. And I've realized that millennials are struggling and nobody's talking about it. And so one of the things that I've done over the last few months, as I've rebuilt my life and put things I love to do, is I started a podcast all about supporting millennials and talking about and dealing with their mental, emotional issues in a healthy way, having that support, that empathy for them, and creating a community that can change. And the ultimate dream is to turn that into a documentary and into a movement, and it's just beginning. So
that's brilliant.
It's cool because I find that the more I do that, the more I heal myself.
That's
because
brilliant.
I'm giving it to others, you know?
That's great. Well, I'm here to support that.
I appreciate it.
I'm sure Mark is too. He's been supporting. You've been here.
I've been the benefactor of this shit. Like, I've been benefiting from it. Where can the people find you, Paul? If people want to get in touch with you, if they
social
want
media.
mentorship, if they want to get on your podcast, go right there and tell them where to find you.
Right here,
right there.
This one, that one?
That one.
Okay. All right. You can find me on social media, Facebook or Instagram. My personal account, at Positive Change. That's with a 3, PO3, because it's a mind, body, soul change.
Woo!
And then my podcast, Create Yourself, CR3, also with a 3, mind, body, soul, all about supporting millennials. You can find me. Episode 3 is about to launch in the next week. So really excited to have these guys on sometime.
Sure.
And it's been truly an honor to be here.
We appreciate having you.
Yeah.
It's been great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Can I throw down a beat really quick?
Yes.
Throw it down.
I don't know how.
Do it into your mic.
Are you
Paul.
kidding? Yeah. Just detach this and
Yeah, detach it.
right there.
I got you.
All right. Check, Mike.
Nice.
That's
Listen,
it.
now I'm sure you've fallen in love with my mentor because He's just all that and so much more. This has been another episode of Put in Work. Thank you so much for joining us again. Please, please, please put your comments in the comment section. Let us know what you like, what you didn't like, what we can do better. Please let us know who else you'd like. We try our best to get a broad spectrum of professionals out here to not just empower you, but to show you step by step what you need to do. I really hope you're enjoying it. We're really enjoying it. And just let us know what we can do better. With that, thank you so much for joining us.